Welcome to the NZ Everyday Investor Podcast. Have you ever wondered about things like Bitcoin, investing in the share market, or buying investment properties? Often the hardest thing about creating wealth is simply making a start. Making a start begins with learning. The NZ Everyday Investor Podcast is all about helping the everyday Kiwi create wealth through investing. None of this should be considered financial advice, but I do hope it gets you thinking. Let's get started. Welcome to the NZ Everyday Investor. Today, we're catching up with Andy Pickering. Now, Andy Pickering is a senior editor at Brave New Coin and the host of the Crypto Conversation podcast. He was first introduced to Bitcoin by guess who? By Kim.com in 2014 when he worked for the Internet Party. How's that for a bit of history? Today, I actually also have a marvelous co-host in the studio, Jarrett Lang. Thanks for joining us, Jarrett.
Hi, Darcy. Thanks for having me. This is very exciting for me. I've never done a podcast, but very, very excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation today with Andy.
Fantastic. All right. Well, without further ado, let us get started. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to the NZ Everyday Investor. I'm your host, Darcy Ongaro. I'm joined in the studio by Andy Pickering. Andy, how are you?
I am very well. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, who are you? How do you fit in the world of finance, investment, technology, you name it?
Okay, so I suppose the easiest way to answer that, Darcy, is I am the editor of the bravenewcoin.com website. So all the news articles about the crypto asset space, I'm the editor in charge of that website. And I'm also the host of our podcast, which is called The Crypto Conversation.
Fantastic. And it's an awesome podcast. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Sure.
So it's really exciting to have you here. And now I'm also joined in the studio with Jarrett Lang.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Happy
Jarrett.
to be here, yes.
Yeah, now where did you come from?
I came from Vancouver, Canada. I showed up on Monday.
You did.
And now I'm doing a podcast with you.
Yeah, it's bizarre how things kind of just
Totally
happen.
bizarre how these things work out.
Yeah.
But very happy to be here.
Fantastic. And we've got you in the studio. You're going to be the voice of probably a lot of people who are listening to this podcast might have heard some podcast episodes that I've tried to do in the area of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in particular, but Jarrett, why I thought it would be great to have you on is that your level of understanding around this space is probably lower than mine, is be fair to say. No offense. But that's
None taken.
But that's quite good, right? Because now you're going to be able to ask questions, hopefully, from the perspective of an everyday person who might not have much of an understanding at all.
Absolutely.
Which is, I think, really important.
I'll try to be that person. I will be that voice here.
That just,
for sure.
Well, be yourself, right?
Totally different from what I do in my professional life. So
yeah, and quickly tell us, what do you do so people know?
I'm the head of campus planning for a university in Vancouver. So I do all the real estate and development for a university there.
Fantastic.
Called KPU, Kwantlen Polytechnic University.
Awesome. Shout out to the university there.
There you go.
Sweet ass. Okay, so today we're covering a broad range of topics on a very sort of general level, and I think with this like broad topic of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds super fast. But Andy, I've been listening to the Crypto Conversation, I think, since it started, and I've found that for me anyway, it's allowed me to get a much deeper understanding of this. And that might not be for everybody. Not everybody's going to be into cryptocurrency, stuff like that. But I thought I'd have you on and just pick your brains and cover off some basic questions so that our listeners can have another stab at the dark at what investing in Bitcoin might look like or other cryptocurrencies. So to start off, do you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast? I'm a fan of it. I think the quality is just off the charts. And I'm not saying that just because you're in the room. I genuinely get value out of it. But what's the sort of mission behind it?
So I think we started the podcast, not that long ago, around June last year. Yeah. And the idea with the podcast is, obviously, as you know, Darcy, and look, I'm a fan of your podcast as well. So
we're a fan of each other.
Let's just get that out of the way.
We're going to have a hug here.
Yeah.
But obviously, podcasts are a really fast-growing content medium and just such a good medium to talk about topics such as investing or, crypto assets or whatever it is. So, a good opportunity for us to explore the wide world of Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrency. And the idea really is to talk to a wide range of people from right around the global ecosystem and just get their particular insights into, whatever area of expertise they have.
Yeah.
And then, so, that is obviously of value to our audience. And I mean, that's it really. But
Yeah. Your audience is very international focus, isn't it? Whereas mine's obviously, New Zealand specific, but being faced towards the world with your content and the guests that you have on, does that pose any sort of challenges just in terms of actually producing the show?
Yeah, it does, Darcy. I mean, I'm sometimes jealous of, people such as yourself, whereas, because it's quite a different thing when you're in the room with someone, sure, as we are now, it's a little bit easier to, build a rapport immediately and just have a easygoing, friendly conversation. Yes. Whereas when, most of my guests, and look, some are local and I do some in the room, but it's just a little bit more challenging sometimes when you don't know someone very well and you've got a Zoom call or a Skype call booked, and suddenly you're on the call and you have that 5-minute conversation where you try and get on the same page, just have a gentle discussion about, what you're talking about, the rules of engagement, and then effectively you hit the record button and you're away. But having said that, I think I'm in a groove now, and a lot of the people that I do talk to are fairly influential in their own right, or they're thought leaders, or they're heads of particular coin projects, or they're leading exchanges. So they are used to doing media or appearing on podcasts. So everyone, knows what to do, and they want to put themselves forward in their best light. And I always want to try and help guests do that, as I'm sure you do.
Ideally, from a different starting point, but like some of the names that you've had on are like pretty phenomenal names, and I wish I could remember them. I know one of them, Antonopoulos.
Yeah,
what's his name?
His name is Andreas M. Antonopoulos. And so, Andreas is one of the, I suppose, the best known Bitcoin evangelists. Yes. And, he's been in the space since very early on, and he is a prolific content producer himself. So he has a podcast and a YouTube channel with a lot of different Bitcoin videos, and the views on those run into the millions and millions.
Yes. Yeah, amazing that way.
Yes.
A really, really good communicator. And so I guess one of my goals with getting on the show as well is that if people who are listening to this show are really into cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, if they want a deeper understanding, your show is probably the best place to start because of the format. The people that you talk to are of such good caliber. So there you go. Shout out for the show. Check out the Crypto Conversation on any platform that you use, and even YouTube if you're a YouTube user.
That's right. Yes.
Cool. Fantastic. Jarrett, I want you to ask a few questions. You're the voice of the everyday person today. Do you want to fire away with just some entry-level starter questions to get the juices flowing?
100%. Yeah.
Cool.
This is interesting conversation for me that we're having here today because I know nothing about Bitcoin. I mean, going back probably a couple of years, I saw that massive increase in value, I think from the shortening of, is that what you guys call it?
The halvening?
The halvening,
yeah.
Right?
The shortening? Isn't that, they use that in baking, right?
I think they use that in baking.
Yeah. Vegetable shortening.
That's a different podcast.
It is.
But the halving, I saw the prices go insane. It made a lot of noise in media. But for me, it's not something I interface with on a daily basis. So what is Bitcoin?
Okay, here we go. Jared, what is Bitcoin? So the cool thing about that question is, depending on who you ask, there are, so many different ways to answer it. And Bitcoin means many different things to different people, but the easiest way to answer that, and what I always say, is that Bitcoin is simply digital money for a digital world. So Bitcoin is a new form of money, really. So we've seen, over time, money just, it evolves as human civilization evolves. So, we go from barter to gold, precious metal, fiat currencies, and now digital currencies. And really that's all that Bitcoin is. However, Bitcoin has several unique properties that make it a little bit interesting and a little bit special. And because Bitcoin is so new, the world is really still coming to grips with what those unique properties mean and what the implications are. But really simply, The power of Bitcoin is that it is a decentralized global currency. So what that means is that no one controls Bitcoin, or no one has issued Bitcoin. So in other words, there's no government running Bitcoin, or there's no central bank running Bitcoin. Instead, Bitcoin lives on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is simply a decentralized distributed network of computers which are all over the world. So no one can shut that network down. And really all that means is that anyone in the world can use Bitcoin to send value to each other with no one in the middle to censor that transaction. And that's quite a powerful idea. But, that at a high level, that's what Bitcoin is.
Okay, so a couple follow-up questions to that. You said that, Bitcoin's decentralized, computers all over the world. Who sets up these computers?
Sure. So the great thing is that anyone can set up a computer. So, the Bitcoin blockchain is an open blockchain, and anyone can get involved. Now, in the early days, it was very easy just to set up your home PC and start contributing to the network or start mining on the network. So Bitcoin miners are computers that really just direct their CPU energy to mining Bitcoins. However, this is, as you probably know, Darcy, now there are these massive mining farms all around the world, and they're concentrated wherever electricity is cheapest, and a lot of that is in different parts of rural China. So anyone can join the network now, and they can set up a node, but what I'm saying with the miners is it's not really cost efficient to set up a home computer and try and mine Bitcoins yourself, simply because
and racks of machines.
You're competing against these huge server farms.
So do you need a lot of money to be a significant miner then? Are people who want to participate in this being outcompeted by large, server farms, if you will, that are powered by, cheap energy and millions of dollars worth of infrastructure?
In the case of Bitcoin at an enterprise level, yes, Bitcoin mining is a very competitive industry. So there are, as I say, just these massive server farms all over the world. And so to get involved in the Bitcoin mining business, Bitcoin mining simply means every 10 minutes on the Bitcoin blockchain, a new block is generated, and there's a block reward. So the block reward means that whichever miner verified and that particular block, they get the Bitcoins with that block as the block reward. Yeah, it would be very difficult to compete against those big mines. However, there are a lot of other smaller cryptocurrencies, and yeah, sure, if you wanted to mine some of those, you just have to get the technical know-how how to do it and figure that out, and then direct your computer, and you could mine some of those smaller cryptocurrencies. Another way that you can do it with Bitcoin is you can join what is called mining pools. So that means all your networked computers are kind of networked together, and they all contribute to one big mining pool.
Better question than I could ask, better answer than I could ever give. Any other questions in the tank?
Well, I'm going to host my own podcast now, I guess.
There you go, man.
Pumping my tires.
You're ready to go.
Again, minimal knowledge here, but I see people investing in Bitcoin. But I also understand it to be a currency. So then for me, it sounds more like people are trading, if you will. It's trading versus investing, but we're here on an investing podcast. Are we investing in cryptocurrency or are we trading it?
A little bit to unpack there, Jared.
Yeah.
The simple answer is yes, Bitcoin is a currency, and it can be an investment, and you can invest in it and you can trade in it. So, the cool thing about Bitcoin and why it's so interesting is that it has only been around for 10 years, right? What we're really witnessing is the birth of a new form of money and a new asset class. And that doesn't happen very often, right? It only happens once every generation or so. So that's what's happening. Everyone says, why is Bitcoin so volatile, right? And the reason it's so volatile is because it's so new and it is literally coming to life around us. In terms of, is it an investment or is it a currency? Yeah, it's both of those things. But for Bitcoin to really function as an effective currency, it needs to get more traction. It needs more liquidity. It needs more people using it every day. And that will happen over time as more and more people come in. So for now, a lot of people like to see Bitcoin more as digital gold, right? So that's the investment thesis for Bitcoin is, the same way gold is seen as a store of value or a safe haven asset. Bitcoin is increasingly seen in exactly the same way. But because Bitcoin is much newer than gold, but it still has a lot of the same properties of gold, then, the idea is that Bitcoin has exponentially more upside than gold, and that's why it's exciting as a potential investment opportunity.
You getting it?
Slowly.
Good.
It's starting to make more sense, but I guess, I think about Bitcoin and for somebody who is, maybe thinking about using it as currency, you can't see it. You can't touch it in the same way that you can with paper money or gold or, other forms of traditional currency. So how are we going to get this more entrenched in the economies of, global economies? I mean, I recognize that it's, not country-specific currency, right? You can kind of use it anywhere, and that's one of the great things about it is the global markets, the digital global markets are connected through various, digital platforms. It's this great common currency, but how do you actually increase its usage when there's so many people out there, much like myself, that will pull out the credit card or a small stack of cash and use that to pay for things?
Well, again, that's just something that is happening over time. Bitcoin is really only 10 years old, so it's very difficult for a new form of money or a new currency to reach critical mass overnight. That's not how new forms of money work. However, the first 10 years of Bitcoin and blockchain was about bootstrapping the network and getting a certain degree of, I suppose, trust that, the Bitcoin blockchain is the immutable, censorship resistant, intense, big monolithic freight train of a blockchain that it is. And I think, the world has very quickly come to an understanding that there is value there.
Yeah, Bitcoin's not dead.
Bitcoin is not dead. And now, there's so much work happening all around the world and what you would call, I suppose, the traditional financial system. So there's, fiat on-ramps coming in from traditional finance, linking up to the crypto exchanges. And then there are, the big traditional people like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, CME Group, these guys are all exploring their own blockchain initiatives and how they can trade Bitcoin. So that's all happening. Meanwhile, there's the wallet ecosystem, and then there's second layer protocols like the Lightning Network. So all of this stuff is happening behind the scenes, and the devs, the entrepreneurs, everything is being built at quite a staggering rate, and that is all slowly being built around us. But it's happening.
One of the I think where you're going with that, Jer, is that, and I kind of think about that as well, is that it doesn't seem to penetrate the consciousness of the average everyday person, and I wonder if that's because us three in the room here in our everyday lives, we don't really need it. Like, we don't need it to store value and to transmit value. We don't need it as an alternative currency because our government is so stable, is so secure, and you're part of the first world nation, right? But there's 1.8 billion people in the world who don't even have access to a bank account, and for them, it's probably a very different angle that they're looking at, right? It's like finally a ray of sunshine here. Maybe there's a way out, right?
Correct. And so that was, that another way of describing Bitcoin. So Andreas Antonopoulos has always said that Bitcoin has the potential to bank the unbanked. So if you imagine all those, billions of people in the third world or those countries where the financial and banking infrastructure just isn't really adequate, and these people, they don't have, identities, IDs, and all that kind of necessary stuff that you need to open a bank account. Whereas with blockchain and Bitcoin and all these other different assets, all you need is a smartphone and
internet access
and internet access. And so we know that smartphones are becoming ridiculously cheap everywhere in the world, and so Bitcoin or blockchain is about, from that perspective, is evening up the financial playing field and giving everyone access to a financial system.
Do you think it might bank the unbanked and unbank the banked?
See, and that is another great way of explaining Bitcoin. And so that means, the reverse is also true. So if you have a bank account and all the, banks are, they're good at what they do, but, there are disadvantages to banks, and that, they make you go through a lot of different processes, and they charge you fees and all that sort of stuff. So a really good example is if you want to send money from, say, New Zealand to Africa, Western Union or whatever, they're going to charge 15, 20, 30% on that, whereas the same thing can be accomplished for, a fee of next to nothing using Bitcoin.
Just think, Jarrett, when we were kids growing up, I probably still owe you money from something.
I think you do, yeah.
There would have been something I would have broke at your house playing when we were like 6 years old, where I probably should pay you back, right? And we could do it by me giving you cash right now and you fly home and you literally take that cash home. I could go to my bank and maybe it eventually gets there, and I don't even know how to do that anymore because it's been so long since I've done it. That's why you're still waiting for me to pay you back. Or I could just get you to download a wallet and send you some Bitcoin, and it's done.
Right. Yeah, I'm just, why I'm pausing on that is because I'm trying to do the math on the interest on what you actually owe me. So
that's right.
It's going to be a big number when we reveal that to you. But
magic of compounding interest, right?
But, yeah. Going to your point though about how, this becomes a very convenient, easy way for transferring money and this and that. How do you protect against like illegal activity or money laundering? For me, it also becomes a really easy tool for that if I kind of put the nefarious activity hat on. Where are the checks and balances there? Banks will ultimately, in my mind, do a reasonably good job of protecting against that. If someone shows up with $1 million in cash, there's going to be some questions. But in the Bitcoin world, how do we ensure that these transactions are legitimate and we're not supporting the proceeds of illegal activity?
Yes.
That's a good question. Well, I think it's a good question.
Thanks, friend.
Yeah.
Yes, Jared, that is a good question.
Oh, sweet. Andy agrees as well.
So there are a couple of different ways to look at that, and I'll try and give you just two different ways to look at that really quickly. So, the first way is that, originally a lot of the people that were first into Bitcoin come from what you would probably describe as a libertarian political point of view, right? So the libertarian point of view would be that it is not the government's business what I do with my money. So from that point of view, it is what it is. If people are going to use their money for whatever it is, then they can do that, right? Yeah. Now, in terms of the money laundering argument, so some people like to say, Bitcoin is a tool for money laundering or for doing nefarious things on the dark web, right? To a certain extent, that was true, but, there's been a lot of blockchain analysis. So one of the things about blockchains is you can really look at transaction history at a really deep level because everything is on the public ledger.
Everything's open.
That's right. And, to be honest, the Silk Road was an important part of Bitcoin's bootstrapping really in the very early days. However, now the amount of transactions that use Bitcoin on the dark web is tiny, really. Yeah. And in terms of money laundering, sure, but I would flip it back on you, Jared. So if you actually do a little bit of research and go and look at any of the big global banks anywhere in the world, Australia or the US, you will see that they have all been fined billions and billions of dollars for money laundering. And if you look at how the drug trade or any particular black market trade, it's all about US dollars. So my point is, it's not about Bitcoin or the dollar. It's, criminals are going to be criminals and they will use whatever best suit their means. But you can't just say Bitcoin is bad because one criminal uses it, because it's the same with the US dollar, and there's some, white-collar criminals or banks.
You can't snort coke through a Bitcoin.
Exactly right.
I always go back to that.
I'd pay to see that, though. That'd be really interesting to see.
And dangerous.
And dangerous.
Kids, don't try that at home.
Yes.
But that's cool. So it's open. It's kind of like, Coke, right? We use Coke, not cocaine, but Coca-Cola with cocaine in it back in the day. I assume that's true.
Yes,
it came from a pretty dodgy place. I wonder why Mom's always drinking the
That's
Coke, right? But now it's like
the dishes are getting done.
That's right.
Very quickly.
Yes.
But now it's like this wonderful, wholesome company, Coca-Cola, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe that's a bad analogy, but I guess it's like a lot of the times something dark might be the motivator or the bootstrapper.
Yes.
But then that becomes almost better over time, and then often the things that start off with, do no evil end up doing evil. It seems to be kind of like flipped and reversed often in this space.
Well, I think it's how a new technology evolves. So, the thing about cutting edge technology is often the people that play around with it are either the nerds and the geeks and the tinkerers,
Yes.
and also the people that are out just on the, let's say, the edges of where society evolves.
That's right.
And those are the people that push things forward.
Amazing, isn't it?
Is a way I would put it.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. Those guys that you probably look down at school, the slightly oddball ones, they're actually, let's thank them for this.
Indeed.
Maybe that's you, Andy. I don't know. I'm looking at you like, no, I'm just kidding. Sorry. Any other questions in the tank there, Jarrett? Because you've just been pulling out all the gems.
No, man. I'm done.
You're spent. Cool.
I'm jet lagged. I'm done.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's cool. So, and I always think about Bitcoin as it's unknown, like you say, Andy. It's 10 years old. And anybody who adopts these things very early on in the process, like anything, they're probably taking a much higher level of risk because there's unknown unknowns and you haven't seen enough history yet to gain confidence. And I think that there's this point, I guess, where that risk drops and the risk of you not adopting it or not being open to it increases. Like if you just stay the course and stick with the status quo, given enough runway, we've seen that all fiat currency systems revert to zero over time. So we know that the clock is ticking. If we look at history, we know that the clock is ticking even with our current monetary system. And I think if anybody does a bit of research, that's absolutely true. So we know that there is an end date. We suspect, or some people suspect, that Bitcoin might be the way of the future. But as time goes on, that confidence grows because that's the beginning. We're at the beginning point. When do you see, Andy, this, I guess we would call that an inflection point or a crossover point where it's actually more safe to be in the digital or the cryptocurrency world versus the current monetary system?
Yeah, so Darcy, there's a thing called the Lindy effect, right?
Okay.
So the Lindy effect says that it just means that the longer something is around, the stronger it gets and the less likely it is to go away. So that's one important fact about Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin's Lindy effects gets stronger every day due to network effects, right? Because
Sure.
Bitcoin is simply a network, and you know how networks grow. It's like the internet or mobile phone adoption or PlayStation adoption. It's an S-curve, right? So it starts off slow, and then we hit that exponential curve, right? So Bitcoin is slowly going exponential in terms of the number of users who are using it around the world.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think around 1% of people around the world
Actually use Bitcoin.
own any Bitcoin at the moment. So you talked about the risk-reward aspect to it, Darcy.
Yeah.
So a good way to understand that is, getting in early into something like Bitcoin. The risks are high because what are the risks? A government could ban it, or there could be a fatal flaw in the Bitcoin protocol, or you could lose access to your wallet. So Bitcoin was very risky early, but in return for taking on that risk, the level of return is over and above any other asset that we've really seen. And if you look back on Bitcoin's 10-year history, Bitcoin has been far and away the best performing asset class on the planet for the last 10 years. Yeah. So, there are...
Amazing, isn't it? It wasn't that long ago that it was 20 cents for a Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
amazing.
And in those early days, even Bitcoin's most enthusiastic enthusiasts in the early days, they weren't really thinking of where Bitcoin could go. They were like, wow, it could go to $10 one day or $100.
Yeah.
1,000 and up to 20,000 was unimaginable in those early days. So, anything could happen as more people adopt and join the system.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you got me thinking, right? Fear of missing out. So I got $1,000 in my pocket. How do I get $1,000 worth of Bitcoin? What do I do?
So Yeah, I think it's relatively easy. It depends where you are in the world, Jared. But where do you live? The US,
Canada, eh?
So for
What gave it away?
yeah,
Yeah.
for
Me and my hosers.
for you, I imagine there's a company called Coinbase, which probably most people have heard of. I imagine they're a US company, but I'm sure that they would be available in Canada. So, and here in New Zealand, we have a company called Vimba, and I think you've had
I've
had
I'm a
Sam
big fan
from
of Vimba, yeah.
Vimba on the show before,
Yeah.
and so really you just a company like Coinbase or Vimba is really just a fiat. And when we say fiat, we just mean
Not the vehicle?
your
Not the
normal
vehicle.
your normal currency on ramp, and so you just would join that service and then deposit your Canadian dollars,
yeah.
and they would convert that into Bitcoin and either send it back to your Bitcoin wallet or hold it. You can hold it on Coinbase.
You take your loonies or your toonies or whatever you hosers now call it the currency. You basically sign up.
We call it the beaver.
You call it the beaver.
The beaver or the moose.
The Beaver and the Moose. That sounds like a great children's book.
Yeah.
So we've got the Beaver and the Moose, right? And we put it into the exchange, and we're basically buying. It's like an exchange, right? You're buying cryptocurrency. They just send it to your digital wallet, and then effectively it sits on your digital wallet, and you're in. You've just swallowed the red pill or the blue pill. I always get confused with that. It's the red pill, isn't it?
I think it's the red pill. I always
Yeah.
get that confused as well. Yeah.
It feels like it should be the blue pill,
Yeah.
but I think it is the red pill, isn't it?
I thought
Yeah.
the blue pill does something else.
Yeah, it does. It does, Jared. But we're talking about something different.
Yes, not
Right.
that
Yeah.
pill. But interestingly, I mean, speaking of these fiat on ramps, even in 2017, and you sort of alluded to it before, Jared, which is when we saw that last really crazy bull market in Bitcoin. Even now in 2020, just 3 years later, it is much easier for people to get into Bitcoin because, particularly in the US, we've seen the rise of apps like the Square's Cash app,
Right.
and things like Robinhood. So it's in the same way that it's very easy for people now to buy fractions of shares using the rise of these apps. It's the same with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, and we're seeing, like, I know, Andy, you had, I really wish I could remember his name, from Celsius. What was the guy?
Yes, Alex Mashinsky.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alex Mashinsky from Celsius.
Yes.
And it's really cool because this was a question that Jared and I, we were talking about this last night. Bitcoin is an investment. Well, if you look at traditional asset classes that produce an income, how do you actually get money out of Bitcoin? You're really just speculating on the price movement. But this Celsius app is and I'm not endorsing that at all, but it's a platform that one could use to deposit their Bitcoin in and get interest on that, because they're effectively just like a traditional financial institution where they're lending out Bitcoin and people are paying interest in Bitcoin, and you can grow your investment in that. And that's just, I guess, one of the manifestations of what could happen in the new world, where there's more and more use cases as people download these apps and they interact with it. The network effect starts to get deeper. It's not so much about price speculation, but it's about utility and applications and use cases, right?
Well, that's exactly right, Darcy. And Celsius is a good example of what we call DeFi, or decentralized finance. So a lot of this is being built on Ethereum, which a lot of people will have heard of as well. So Ethereum is the number 2 crypto asset in terms of market capitalization behind Bitcoin. But so, there's this massive DeFi, decentralized finance ecosystem being built out around us as well. And so that means that it's really just like a completely new financial system being built from the ground up, but it operates on, crypto assets and decentralized protocols, and you can do everything that you can do in the traditional financial system, whether it's lending, borrowing, hedging, decentralized gambling. There's a lot of really exciting use cases, and that's all, that's starting to boom
And
at the moment.
smart contracts.
Smart contracts,
I
so
find
that's
that
how it all
fascinating.
works, exactly.
It's going to be disruptive, right? But it's,
I think so.
yeah. But yeah, as we see the use cases develop, it's kind of like, I guess, an example of where a new tool gets created, but for what purpose?
Yes.
Rather than, hey, we want to build something new, but we're using old tools. It's the other way around now. We have really cool tools. What can we do with it? And I guess it's similar to what the internet would have been back in the day. I remember going to a friend's house back in the 90s, I guess it was. Remember Devin? We used to go to school with this guy named Devin. He was
Devin
out-
McRae.
Yeah.
Are you
Shout
out there,
to
Devin?
You listening, Devin? So we went over to Devin's house, and he showed us the internet. And he pulled out his phone, and he stuck it on a thing, and I don't know what speed that was going, but that was like that was weird because all it did was it showed up a green screen with a bunch of stuff, and I think he was chatting to somebody in Albuquerque. But that was like, cool, this is a new tool, but yeah, it's a bit lame. What are we going to do with it? How does it actually work? Who's ever going to use this? And that's kind of what it feels like now that we're at that Web 3 juncture.
That's right.
What's next?
And you said it was an inflection point. So we're potentially just approaching that inflection point. But to do that, the network effects need to kick in, and particularly the technology needs to mature to a point that it is really easy for anyone to use. So if you remember in the early days of the internet, even perhaps before you guys are playing around with your friend after school, shout out to Devon.
That's right.
But,
yeah.
in the early days of the internet, just to send an email, you almost had to write a couple of lines of code.
Right.
Because, so my point is, DeFi is, it's a little bit like that at the moment. It's a little bit technically intimidating for the average user. Correct. But all of that, as the UI and the UX evolves and all these blockchains figure out how to scale and increase their capacity,
Correct.
That's what needs to happen
Correct.
for it to really reach that
skin,
inflection
right?
point.
That skin needs to be a little bit more
seamless and
attractive.
easy, intuitive.
So how far away are we from that?
Well, that is the $1 million question, but
it could literally be $1 million question.
Everything is starting to happen.
Yeah. If you're not in it, and I kind of go in and out of it, it's like one of the few things that I'll look at, but I'm not fully into it all the time. And so whenever I look at it, I can see that things have shifted. There's always a bit of progress. You're looking at my blue hand, aren't you?
I'm looking at your blue hands. Why are your hands blue, Darcy?
I'm not going to say why my hands are blue. Maybe I blew myself. So I'll just put that over there for now. But what was I saying? But the thing is that when you're not in it all the time, but you revisit it, you can see the progress.
Yes.
But if you were not in it at all, and the very first time you look at it, hopefully it'll be a bit more interesting. But I guess the point is that this happens no matter what. You people have thought that Bitcoin was dead, and it resurrected itself a little while ago and proved to everybody that, hey, it wasn't dead. And now it seems like things are shifting, and it seems like that inflection point, well, we know it's closer because more and more people like me are actually open to it.
And me now.
And you now. All right, we've got you converted now, have we?
Yeah.
Welcome to the club, friend. Get a gift basket.
Is it Bitcoins?
It's market cycles, right?
Yeah.
It's really just that's how market cycles work. So, people always say, Bitcoin tends to go on these crazy run-ups, and then it will crash, and then it will bottom out and just go steady for a while, and then the cycle repeats. And we've seen that cycle repeat a number of times already in Bitcoin's 10-year history. So the last really big one when the world really noticed was 2017.
Yes.
But then, of course, and the reason why it's going up and then crashing is, as I said before, it's really the monetization of a new asset class. And it has to be volatile because a lot of money has to come in, and new investors have to come into the system, and then they get washed out, and the cycle continues. But each time, the whole asset class and the people that are building out the infrastructure gets bigger and stronger each time.
We often get stuck on the little waves crashing at the beach, but meanwhile the tide is actually coming in, right?
Correct.
We can't perceive that.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's go a little bit deep in one area, and by a little bit deep I mean very, very little bit deep.
Sure.
Let's talk about the halvening. Or the shortening. I actually prefer the shortening.
I like the shortening too. It makes me hungry.
It makes me think of Crisco.
Or the quickening. Or the Highlander.
Yeah, there you go. Let's talk about the halvening. And to preface this segment here, I don't want people to think that investing in Bitcoin is all about just buying Bitcoin and speculating on the price direction. Yes, you could do that. That's what I would call trading or speculation or even hodling. But it's more about investing as in the concept of buying into or understanding or learning about and being open to, because that's probably what's more important in this space, is just to be doing all those things rather than just buying and holding and saying you're into Bitcoin. I think there's a bit more to it.
Absolutely. The easiest way to sum that up, Darcy, is don't invest in something you don't understand. If you're going to put money into something, actually take the time to understand what you're doing, right?
Cool. And it is fun to understand it.
Yes.
It's really entertaining. If you're into sci-fi, like I know you are, Andy,
yes,
it's kind of like the sci-fi of monetary systems, except there's probably a little bit more psi than phi.
Indeed.
So, That's good, eh? That's gold, man.
Gold. I'm going to use
Print
that.
it.
Let's
Print
print it on a
Yeah.
bumper
Use that,
sticker.
yes.
Beautiful. But where I was going with that was the whole, buyer
halving,
beware.
the halving.
The halving.
Yes.
Be careful. This isn't financial advice. You know that by now, listeners. But if this is something that you're open to, then listen to this, because there's a lot of fundamentals behind this. And if you understand those fundamentals already from a different asset class, you can apply it to this one. Specifically, the stock to flow model, basically supply and demand dynamics. So
Yes.
talk to me. What is the halvening?
Okay, so let me just try and explain this as simply as I can. So in May this year, there will be an event which we call the Bitcoin halving. So this happens every 4 years. So what that is
Sorry, did you say halving? Or so when I say halvening, that's not a halvening. Halvening is probably not even a word, is it?
No, it is. So here's what it is. So from my point of view, whenever I talk to someone like a New Yorker, I've had a couple of New York guys on the podcast, and they say the Bitcoin halvening. That was a terrible accent, but they say halvening like you do. So maybe it's a Canadian thing, but yeah, they mean the same thing. It just means halving.
Okay,
but, yes.
We're chopping it in half. We're chopping something in half here. Okay,
Correct.
As you were, Andy. Continue.
Okay, so the Bitcoin
Happening.
blockchain, right? So every 10 minutes, a new block is added to the Bitcoin blockchain, and the miner that verified that block, they receive the block reward, which is currently 12.5 Bitcoins. So that means every 10 minutes, 12.5 fresh new Bitcoins are added to the system. So on an average day, that means around 1,800 new Bitcoins are out there, right? Yes. So the money coming in from investors or traders or buyers to keep the Bitcoin price roughly steady at the moment, that means those 1,800 Bitcoins need to be bought every day.
Correct.
Now, every 4 years, baked into the Bitcoin protocol is the halving event, which just reduces the number of new Bitcoins by half. So that means every 10 minutes, instead of 12.5 Bitcoins, it will be 6.25. It's been 900 Bitcoins a day. So the implications of that are, supply and demand. So it simply means if demand for Bitcoin stays roughly the same, instead of having to buy up those 1,800 new Bitcoins every day, there'll be only 900 new Bitcoins added to the system. And so this happens every 4 years. So it just means over time, if demand is rising, the supply of Bitcoin is always falling. And we know what happens with supply and demand. And, the other thing, the other thing just to really quickly add to that is, some people will have heard that, Bitcoin is limited, right? So it's limited in supply because there will only ever be a total of 21 million Bitcoins. After we reach that 21 million hard limit, that's it.
That's it. And then currently there's about 18 million Bitcoin in circulation.
Correct.
So if thinking about price and typical classic, I guess, supply, demand, economics, if demand is a constant but the supply is decreased, that pushes up the price.
Correct.
In theory.
That's the idea.
That's the idea.
Obviously, markets are much more nuanced than that, but that's the idea, yes.
But it's just one of the things that plays on behind the scenes.
Correct.
And so this event, or this kind of this supply side shock that we know is coming, what effect has that had on the price of Bitcoin in the past? And if we can speculate just a little bit, with a lot of disclaimers everywhere, that past isn't the predictor of the future, what are we expecting will happen?
So it's obviously difficult to answer this question with any degree of certainty because no one can be certain. But happy to speculate, Darcy.
Cool.
There's only been 2 halvings in Bitcoin's price history so far. So that's not a lot of, price history to go by. Right. But generally speaking, what has happened in the past is, there's been a little bit of a dip before the halving, and then a run up, and then a dip, and then after the halving is when Bitcoin will enter a new bull market and then go on to hit a new all-time high, and then it will come down and crash and bottom out, and then the cycle continues, but it hits a higher all-time high again.
So really what you're saying is it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down.
Correct.
Okay.
But yes, but the lows are lower and the highs are higher. Cool. So a lot of the discussion around this year's halving is it's quite interesting because now obviously a lot more people know about Bitcoin, a lot more people hold Bitcoin, even if it is just 1% of the planet, that is millions and millions of people.
Yes.
Interesting thing about the halving is that it is a known event, right? So we know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So from a traditional financial markets point of view, they talk about the efficient markets hypothesis, right? Which simply means if there is publicly available information, then that should be priced into the markets, right? So from that perspective, the halving shouldn't really have any effect on the Bitcoin price because all market participants are aware of it. But, it's a little bit more nuanced because, there's not that many people playing in the markets already, and Bitcoin has proven to be a volatile asset, and it doesn't take a lot of money to push the price around.
Correct.
So,
Well, it's basically just it's got a market cap just a little bit bigger than Amazon. But the 1%, if you look at who they are, they're not the same type of people that are investing in the other asset classes. So it follows then that there's probably going to be a different type of sentiment that drives price movement. Understanding psychology and patterns and stuff like that works to a degree, but we're talking about a subset of the population, right? So that's probably where some of that nuanced price action happens, right?
we are, and it's also people, we talked about the risks before. And so what happens with the Bitcoin markets, I think, is that while you can price in the halving events, people price in the risk as well. But that risk is probably, it's oversubscribed because people, as I said before, they're worried that Bitcoin might turn out to be something wrong with it, or a government moves against it. So that's why they don't go in. But if those things don't happen, then
Gotcha. The handbrake's removed.
then people put their money in and they can get a higher return because they are taking on that risk. It just means the risk-reward ratio is much, much better.
We overreact to bad news, underreact to good news. When those barriers are removed, someone takes their foot off the hose and we're off.
Boom.
Yeah. Sweet. So everyone who's listening, just buy Bitcoin. You'll
Buy
be
Bitcoin.
sweet. Now, I did not say that, and I don't want you to do that.
No.
Of course. But
Are there
it's the-
examples of governments not wanting or kind of getting along with Bitcoin? Is that happening out there? Are we seeing signals of that?
Yes, there are. So Bitcoin is not really what we would call, illegal, particularly in any Western democracies. But, there's also the regulations surrounding Bitcoin are slightly different in every country. So that's one of the challenges, is how do you regulate what is simply a decentralized piece of computer code that has no borders and there's no jurisdiction for it. So that's one of the challenges. But all those regulations are slowly firming up all around the world. And, for example, it's legal here in New Zealand to pay your employees using crypto assets.
Yeah.
And that's increasingly the case all over the world. So I don't think I don't think Bitcoin is going to become illegal anywhere in the world anytime soon.
But certainly, I guess, if I was a central bank, if I was the issuer of a currency in some sort of domain, it would be interesting. I would be thinking, well, either we have to adopt and create one of our own, like there needs to be a digital New Zealand dollar, there needs to be a digital Canadian dollar. We need to kind of replicate what's happening right away, or we need to get our heads around the fact that these cats that we're trying to herd, they're going to go into a different formation that we might not be comfortable with. Mm-hmm. I think that there could be some interesting developments there, like, in terms of central banks around the world. Andy, do you have any sort of perspective on that you want to share?
Yes, so that's a very hot topic of discussion at the moment all around the world. So most of the central banks, in fact, all of the central banks, to some degree or another, they have been doing their own research or trials and looking at what a central bank digital currency would look like. Yeah. So China in particular are a long way along here, and the expectation is that China will be the first to deploy a central bank digital currency. Right. And it'd be interesting to see what happens, because China are a little bit of a special case, because obviously they are a little bit more of an authoritarian
There's
government.
a little bit of communism in there.
Correct.
I've noticed.
Just a dash.
Just a dash, just to make it spicy.
Yeah, and from China's perspective, a little bit of a dystopian view, but if depending on how they deploy this, it will be very possible for them to effectively track at quite a detailed level the transactions of their citizens. And if someone does some kind of transaction that they disagree with, they could lock them out of their digital wallet, or
a lot more control. Because of that information layer that accompanies these types of currencies is very rich. And so I guess there's an opportunity there to do all sorts of things, good and bad. But I think about it in terms of what's good about it. I think about the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, the levers they can pull to control inflation, increase the price of money via the official cash rate. What would it look like if there was a currency that had so many other qualitative levers that could be pulled as well as the quantitative pieces? How well could a central bank actually control an economy? It would increase the power for good or for evil, I suspect. That's the question, though, right? Is in the wrong hands, what would that look like?
It is right, but I suppose the central banks are going to want to peg the digital currency to whatever their existing currency is, and another part of this, of course, is last year when Facebook announced their Libra project, and that effectively is simply a digital currency and their proposal was to link the Libra to a basket of currencies, other fiat currencies.
Yeah. Did you hear about that, by the way, Jared? Like, thinking about an everyday perspective here, like when
I heard about it. I had no idea what it was about, and it's like, I'm not going to do that.
And of course,
does it fly?
Most of the central banks, and particularly the American government, have come out. The politicians have come out very strongly against Libra because they see it as a threat to the US dollar or the pound or the global financial system. So while they can slow Libra down or potentially regulate it to within an inch of its life, the cat is kind of out of the bag.
But it's almost like a smokescreen. It's because they're focusing on this Libra as a big threat, but really there's probably not actually much behind it. Whereas Bitcoin, meanwhile, there's so much more behind it, but it's got no skin.
You can't slow down Zuckerberg. He's El Fuego.
Zuckerberg is an android, isn't he?
Yeah.
Is he an AI? Or was that Elon Musk? Yeah, I'm not sure.
They're both the same person. I think his name is Satoshi.
Yes.
Okay, so thanks, Andy, and thank you, Jared, for kind of helping us meander through some really good questions. I thought, hopefully people agree that that there's so much out there, but the questions and the answers are just so perfect to get hopefully people's understanding up a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's all I aim to do with these shows, is just to help build wealth in the lives of everyday people and think about building wealth with new tools. New wealth, new tools. This is a new tool. We should be open to it. Not investment advice. Now, I want to do something on you, Andy. I'm going to use experiment on you. I've been listening to your show for a while, as I mentioned. And at the end of, I think, almost every one of your episodes with your guests, you do something called the Crypto Hot Take Round. Awesome. You cover off some questions. Most of them I understand. Some of them I don't, to be honest. But we're gonna flip it and reverse it on you, Andy.
Nice. I love it. This is going to be fun, Darcy. I'm actually looking forward to this. Yes.
That's good. Okay, good.
The Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round.
That's right. There you go. So let's start with the Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round. Why don't you take it away, Jarrett, and ask the first question?
Okay. We have some rapid fire questions here. Where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
Wow, that is a great question, Jared. So I would say that I lean towards Bitcoin from an investment point of view, and I have great faith in Bitcoin. A lot of the other cryptocurrencies and tokens, they have their use cases, but I'm sold on Bitcoin as an investment case, less so on other coins. So I'll put it like that.
Cool. Okay, wonderful.
Good answer.
Great answer. Here's a question. I actually did a little bit of research in between the 18 mosquito bites I got and this morning. I actually reached out to a friend who's involved with Bitcoin back in Canada, and he said, ask him this question.
Okay.
Your opinion on the BTC/BCH debate. What is the real Bitcoin? Now, I have no idea what this means, but I'm going to ask you that question anyway.
The real Bitcoin is Bitcoin, which is BTC.
Okay. Take that, Joe. That's the answer. I understand that New Zealand has a federal election coming up. in 2020?
Yes, it does.
Who wins?
Yeah, interesting, because you flipped that on me, because I always ask who is going to win the American election. Okay, New Zealand election, I wasn't expecting that, but I think the status quo, it'll be the same again.
Really?
Yes.
Whoa.
Next question. UBI is a potential fix for AI-induced automation. Is that a good idea?
Universal basic income.
Oh, I thought it was that band. Oh, wait, that's UB40.
That's UB40. Yeah. UBI is different. It's more like an infection.
So UBI is a potential fix for AI-induced automation. Is this a good idea?
Yes, hey, shout out to the Yang gang. I think in a long enough time frame in most places in the world, some kind of UBI, maybe not in the current model, but I think some kind of UBI will be a thing, and I think it will be cryptocurrency related.
Wow.
Okay.
Cool.
Bill Gates famously said, "We tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. What does the blockchain space look like in 10 years' time?"
Yeah, I love this quote, and I think this quote applies to so much of the world. And just the easiest way to answer that is simply this. It goes back to what we were talking about before. You know, right now, interacting with blockchains and cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance, it's a little bit difficult, but in 10 years' time, it will just be like using any app. You just click a button and it happens, and no one even will need to know that there's a blockchain or any of that stuff happening under the hood. Everything will just work.
Cool.
Sci-fi author William Gibson said, "The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. What's an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?"
Oh, a great question. I love that quote as well.
You know that you wrote these questions, right, Andy?
I do know that. But that said, these are other people's quotes. But, you know, William Gibson he's a great guy, great author. Love that dude. I love this quote, and I'm going to answer it twice just because I can. So firstly, I would say esports. Esports is the future happening right now.
Yep.
But also what's really interesting is what's happening in China right now. So China are fast tracking the future in so many ways simply because they're being forced to react to what is happening with the coronavirus. So I think you're going to see an explosion in trends like food delivery robots, like autonomous food delivery, remote work, telepresence, VR, all that stuff, because there's going to be a drop in people wanting to mingle with other humans. And so anything that makes it easier for us to interact remotely through technology, that's the future happening right now.
Wow.
Okay.
That's cool, man. That's a great insight.
All right. Let's zoom out for a moment. What's the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I think it's always a mix of both. And I think, you know, humanity, civilization, and the societies we're building and the technologies we're creating, it does swing back and forward. But on a long enough time frame, I'm an optimist. So let's say utopia.
Cool.
Oh, I feel better.
Phew. Phew.
All is right with the world.
Yeah.
And finally, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
I suppose just to flip the utopian vision on its head, I'm going to say The Matrix, because the first Matrix, what a film, what a movie. I really love that movie. And I think it's just a really good exploration of the simulation hypothesis, which is about as dystopian as it gets. But and I love that movie, and I love this idea that everything is really just a simulation.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people that are really, into physics and stuff like that,
Elon Musk is a big simulation guy.
Yeah, it's probably not too far away from reality.
Correct.
You zoom in close enough.
Yes.
So that's cool, man. So thanks for allowing you to be subjected to your own medicine there. That was pretty cool.
Thank you, Darcy. That was fun. I enjoyed that.
And I think that about wraps it up for today's episode of the NZ Everyday Investor. And again, I want to plug your podcast, The Crypto Conversation. You can find it on any podcast player, presumably Spotify as well.
Yes, yep.
YouTube.
Spotify, Apple, exactly. Or you can find it on bravenewcoin.com.
Yes.
If you search Crypto Conversation on there, yes.
Cool, sweet. And before we go, real quick explanation of how does the whole kind of universe work within the Crypto Conversation is obviously part of Brave New Coin, which is part of the Techemy group. Do you want to just talk me through that really quickly?
Yes, sure. So Brave New Coin, we are a data and research company in the crypto asset and blockchain space. So our editorial or media side is we're kind of like the Wall Street Journal for for crypto, and we also create, data products for anyone that wants to engage with the crypto ecosystem. So, like, if anyone out there has an Amazon, if you ask Amazon Alexa what the price of Bitcoin is, she will tell you, and that is our data feed.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. Really appreciate that. And there'll be a little bit of show notes in there if people want to check it out.
Fantastic.
Including a link to Brave New Coin and the Crypto Conversation. So, let's leave it there, man. And thank you again to our marvelous co-host, Jarrett Lang.
Always a pleasure. Never a chore, Darcy.
Totally agree. Well done. Awesome. Peace out.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Well, that was awesome. Thanks so much for listening in to this episode of the NZ Everyday Investor. Hey, if you haven't found us yet on YouTube, we are on YouTube. Just go on there, search for The Everyday Investor, subscribe to us, click on the notification bell. We haven't done it yet, but one of the things that we have in store later on this year is that we're going to start doing live feeds on YouTube. So if you want to watch the NZ Everyday Investor live, and yes, some of them may actually include live questions and answers and all that sort of stuff, then make sure that you've subscribed to us on YouTube, click the notification bell so that when we do that, you're in it. Awesome. Now, this episode was really fun. I've been meaning to do this for a long time because I've been watching and listening to Andy Pickering from the Crypto Conversation for quite some time, partly because I often listen to the podcast that, the host is so slick and so good, so I can get better at it, but partly also because I just really enjoy the content. And I am into crypto. I'm a crypto dude. I guess I'm probably more of a Bitcoin dude. So I have already gone through the conversion process, the baptism into Bitcoin, but I'm aware, Jarrett, that this was probably the first time that you probably had a serious, engaging conversation with somebody about Bitcoin. How do you feel about Bitcoin? And, do you feel kind of like, hey, this is something that could be part of my life going forward?
Yeah, like straight up, I actually am a lot more comfortable with the idea of buying some Bitcoin now. So like I said in the podcast, I'm going to scrape a couple pesos together and see if I can participate in this global digital currency.
Yeah, digital currency for a digital world.
Andy's got a great beard, by the way.
Yeah, and you don't really pick that up on podcasts.
No.
That's why people often say, you've got a great face for radio. To me, anyway, they say that, or a great face for podcasting.
He's a smart guy, but the beard's tight. Like it's a good look, man. Totally grow a big wolfy beard if I could. I'd hide stuff in it.
So you actually think that you would give it a go? And I don't want you to lose any money by doing this. I hope no one's listening.
You guys made a good point. Like any investment that you make out there, right? Mm-hmm. Due diligence is the most important thing that you can do, right? Whether it's commercial real estate or residential or the markets or whatever the case is, know what you're going to be investing in, right? So there's still a bit of homework to do, and there's still some more questions and things like that I'll need to ask. But yeah, I think it's interesting. It's something to at least explore, and based on this conversation with Andy, I'm willing to do that.
That's good. And to the degree of your knowledge, confidence, financial means, invest accordingly, right? Like if I didn't really know much about a sector, then I'd do some due diligence, but I probably wouldn't do much if I wasn't into it. So that whole being into it piece, having some interest in it, that's probably really important as well. Like if your day-to-day work, if you're wired a certain way and you're not into technology or finance, well, sorry, but Bitcoin basically is a giant fruit roll-up full of technology and finance. So you're going to have to kind of get...
Yeah, you're not going to rob Peter to pay Paul on this one, for sure. But nor should you ever do that when you're doing investing, right? You should always be wise with your money. Like always make sure that you have enough to sustain yourself in your day-to-day.
So just to kind of wrap this up, I'm curious. You did a really great crypto hot take. What's your favorite sci-fi film?
Oh, man. There was this one, I think, back in the 80s or something like that. It was called like The Mutants of 2051.
Yeah, I think
Does that sound familiar?
Correct. It was The Mutants of 2051 AD.
Oh, AD. That's right. Not to be confused with The Mutants of 2051 BC. I think that one, I don't know, it struck a chord with me. There's something, it just kind of...
Probably in the same sort of category as The Matrix or 2001 Space Odyssey. Some of the Star Trek movies, definitely Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, so it's kind of in the same quality. The writing is insane. Like I know the movie you're talking about.
Yeah.
The Mutants of 2051 AD.
Yeah, it's like kind of like imagine what like Logan's Run did for sci-fi in the 70s, The Mutants of 2051 AD in the early 80s. Early 80s?
83.
83?
Yeah.
Dang, you got a good memory for that.
I remember
stuff,
this
man.
movie so well. I watch it like every year. I watch it with my kids.
I think when you break it down, there's components of that movie that even to this day, so we're like, 35 years, into the future, there's lessons in that movie that still resonate today. And I think if you actually took some of those lessons and applied them in today's context, today's world, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know where he went to access that vision, right? But I think that when they wrote The Mutants of 2051 AD, I think they went to a special place.
Yeah. The writing is so kind of maybe beyond what you can typically access.
Yeah.
Like your neural pathways kind of like in a regular state that you think they had a heightened level of awareness and thinking that allowed them to
I think so.
be that creative for 2051.
Yeah. Maybe we should just finish the podcast on a segment from The Mutants of 2051 AD.
Wait, okay, can you do that?
I've got the technology.
You got the
I
technology?
learned it because I was inspired by that movie.
Like I said, tons of life lessons. I think it'd be fantastic for the
Yeah.
listeners to be a part of that. So
Let's actually put the sound in now, and we'll go out in that. So thank you again, Jarrett, for being my marvelous co-host on today's episode of the NZ Everyday Investor.
I loved it, man. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. I'd love to do this again.
Let's do that sometime. Good on you. Thanks for listening in, everyone. See you later.
I was the only one left on the planet after the Holocaust, eh? Hey, go! The Earth had been devastated by nuclear war. Like Russia blew up the U.S. and U.S. blew up Russia, eh? Psst, act. Lucky for me, I'd been off planet on vacation at the time of the war, eh? There wasn't much to do. All the bowling alleys had been wrecked. So as I spent most of my time looking for beer. One day, I was out looking for a nice place to build a city for my children when I spotted a mutant in the Forbidden Zone. I landed my vehicle to pursue and destroy this genetic freak before he could warn other mutants in the underground caves. I was kind of like a one-man force, eh? Like Charlton Heston in Omega Man. Did you see it? It's beauty. Fleshy-headed mutant, are you friendly? No way, eh? Radiation has made me an enemy of civilization. Alpha Base, this is Bob McKenzie. I've spotted a fleshy-headed mutant in Sector 16B. Take off, you hoser!
I hope you enjoyed the latest episode of the NZ Everyday Investor Podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, then I'd encourage you to visit the show notes on your podcast player. And while you're there, sign up to our newsletter. If you're keen to see how good looking we are in real life, we're also on YouTube. Just search for The Everyday Investor. I hope that what you heard today will somehow encourage you to build real and lasting wealth in your world. But do remember to seek your own advice before acting on any of the material covered today. Catch you next time.